Hello and welcome to the Falcon Focus podcast. It's great to be back as the second semester is finally underway after yesterday's snow day. Our brand new start time. We're live on Facebook Live from 9:45 a.m. to 10:15 back here in the cafeteria, and live every Tuesday, archived on cuwfalcons.com. You can download the audio thanks to Podbean and listen through iTunes. We begin this week's edition talking acrobatics and tumbling with head coach Sarah Koenig as the team about to begin its fifth season. The season begins Sunday, February 10th. Adrian in town at 2 o'clock. One of three home dates in all inside the John Book Fieldhouse. And this is now your third season at the helm. How excited are you to get this season finally started?
I'm very excited. I'm really looking forward. This is a younger team, so I'm excited to see what they put onto the mat, how they do in competition, and I'm just really excited to go out there and see how they do.
So how's practice been going to date?
It's been really good. They've been going really hard in January over Winterim. We had a couple two-a-days in there, and they were going really hard, long days for them, but they put in a lot of really good work, and I think it's going to pay off this season.
Looking at your roster, which you can find on cuwfalcons.com, there are 8 freshmen listed, 3 sophomores, no juniors, 7 seniors, so 18 athletes in all. When you break down the roster, is it a good blend of youth and experience? Do you consider yourself an experienced team? How would you kind of characterize the roster?
I would say we are definitely a young team, but I would say we're a little more experienced on the side of competition. The team, all of my upperclassmen that have already competed, have really taken the new guys under their wing and kind of explained to them how competition works. So I think we're a good balance right now of younger and experienced athletes, but I think next year will really be even a bigger shift to being a little bit more of a younger team.
So there's certain athletes at this moment that you kind of look at, maybe the more experienced athletes, and say, I'm expecting some big things out of you. I'm expecting some of that leadership.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really expecting them to kind of step up, to kind of teach the new guys what our program is all about, not just in the sense of how our competitions run, but also what it means to be a part of the program and our team here. And they've done an excellent job at that.
So who are some of those athletes that stand out?
Stand out? Well, it's kind of interesting. So for our team, we don't have any team captains, which is a little bit different than other sports. So I would
how
say.
Does that work? Do you eventually have team captains or?
So one of the beauties about the ways that we don't have team captains is because we believe, because it's such a beautiful mesh of different backgrounds and experiences and everybody's learning, that everybody kind of is able to step up and take on a leadership role in their own way. So there are definitely different leaders in terms of who's a little bit more vocal on the team, but we also have leaders who might not speak up as much but lead by example, or might kind of lead outside of practices as far as getting the team together to do activities or things like that. So I would definitely say I have a good mixture of everybody being able to step up and kind of take on that leadership role, especially my more experienced athletes.
So with all this said, again, with that blend of experience, youth, what are your expectations for the season?
I'm expecting them to do very well. Last year was the first year that we qualified for a national championship title in one of our pyramid events, so I'm expecting at least one of those events to go back again this year. And then also expecting them to kind of continue to push some of those school records that have been set with over the past couple years, and really continuing to push the program records forward.
Look at the sport, acrobatics and tumbling, and you know, maybe a couple years ago we'd sit here and try to get to the sports 101 and figure out what the sport's all about, what it entails, and now it's okay, 5th season, so you're hoping that the fans and the community is starting to catch on. And there's been some news media coverage about the sport, about this team. How about from a recruiting standpoint? But do you find it getting a little bit easier in trying to sell the sport versus maybe at the beginning where, I mean, you're looking for all kinds of different athletic ability to kind of fill roster spots?
Definitely. I would say that recruiting has gotten a lot easier just with the amount of coverage that the sport has gotten in general across the country. So I'm finding that I have to spend less time really explaining what the sport is, and more often than not, if I ask a recruit if they've heard about acrobatics and tumbling, it kind of sounds familiar. They might have seen some videos online. They might even have friends that do it across the country. So from that aspect, it's gotten a lot easier to kind of have to minimize the explanation as far as the sport goes, and kind of really be able to highlight the opportunities that our program has to offer.
And when you're looking for incoming freshmen, how do you go about doing so? What are you looking for in a particular athlete? Because as mentioned, you look at this sport and you don't really have it at the high school level.
Right. So really our main draw is from competitive gymnastics, either artistic or acrobatic, tramp and tumbling, anything like that. And then we also pull from the cheerleading background, so competitive cheer, high school cheer, all-star cheer, all of that kind of stuff. So those are the kind of the two main pools that we pull from. But that being said, we also are able to pull in a lot of different experiences from other athletes. For instance, divers have transitioned very well into our sport in the past. And so being able to kind of combine all of these different background experiences has been really helpful as far as creating more opportunities for women.
Is it a fair statement, though, to make that perhaps the sport is finally catching on? People are starting to understand, those that they care about the sport are starting to get it versus, the first number of years where you had to take a lot of time maybe before an event to explain what this is all about?
I think that's a fair statement. I would say that the education piece is always ongoing. It's always growing. There's always more questions and people kind of want to learn more about the history or the sport. But I would say that that's a fair statement, that more people are understanding kind of what we're trying to do here as far as creating the opportunities and then pushing for that NCAA status.
Last year, some great competition throughout the course of what was a 3-5 season, winning 3 out of your last 4. How do you summarize the 2018 season?
I would say that was a really big turning year for the team. For the program itself, like I said, we made it to the national championship level. That's the first time any D3 team has ever been. That's the first time Concordia has been. So I think that was a really cool opportunity for our athletes. Also, kind of talking about some of those bigger name schools that we got to compete against. I mean, that's just a fantastic chance for our athletes to kind of see what other competition looks like across the nation, and something really unique about our sport that other sports don't have the opportunity to do.
Yeah, I know it was your alma mater, but how did you get Oregon to come here, and how special was it to have the Ducks in your backyard?
It was really nice to have them come visit our campus. I knew some of the athletes still, and so it was nice to be able to see them in competition. Some of them are former teammates, and that was really fun. As far as getting them out here, so at the beginning of the year, we get scheduled a certain number of meets, and they tell us what our opponents are. So that was kind of already scheduled for us, that they were going to come out. I think they kind of did a multi-stop trip on the way out here, but it was really fun to have them back, and it was really exciting to compete against them.
And it's neat too, because you don't often, depending on what the sport is, get a national champion or soon to be national champion to come through. But talk about the experience of facing a Baylor. You set the bar high, and certainly for your athletes, an opportunity to see, okay, what's it take to get that next level?
Yeah, and I think it's a big motivator for them, because they know that we're not necessarily expected to beat a Baylor, for instance, but we are expected to hang in there with them during certain events. So I think that really pushes them, and it's cool when the coaches and the team get to come over afterwards and kind of intermingle with each other, and they say, oh, you guys did so good, or you look so clean, and things like that. I think that really means a lot coming from someone other than myself and my assistant, who they hear from all the time.
Well, you mentioned it earlier. You touched base on it. It was a history-making duration last season, earning an at-large bid for the Pyramid Heat 3 Open at the NCATA National Championships in Erie, Pennsylvania. Explain that weekend. How much fun was that weekend? Again, being exposed to that atmosphere, to that level. I
think it was really an eye-opening experience for the team members that were able to go. Myself and my assistant have both been to national champions before, so it was kind of hard to explain exactly kind of what that atmosphere is really like. But I think that really put a fire under them to come back and get more of their team members there again, because they want other people and more of them to experience exactly what that atmosphere feels like. And it's really nice, because at the national championship level, when we get to event finals, for example, it's very much just everybody cheering for each other. So it's a very communicative.
You mentioned you have the national championship experience, competing at that level with Oregon. What made those Ducks teams so special, and how do you go about, as a coach now, trying to build that kind of a culture, that kind of environment here?
I think one of the things that made Oregon so special was the competitive drive that came from all of the athletes that they recruited. It's a little bit of a different atmosphere here at Concordia in terms of what our goals are, just because one of the beautiful things about our program is that we allow for our athletes to have other opportunities outside of athletics. Whereas at Oregon, I know a lot of our athletes were, mainly focused on athletics, and it was very hard sometimes to balance other things. So I would say that one of the nice things that I'm able to pull from my Oregon experience that I'm able to bring here is kind of how to use that time management well, but also be able to be very purposeful about what practices include as far as strategically planning out when we need to touch on certain events.
When you were at Oregon, did you know much about this sport, or how did you get involved?
I had no idea that acrobatics and tumbling was a sport. I actually transferred to Oregon my sophomore year. I had done gymnastics my whole life, didn't know what I wanted to do in college really with the sport, kind of figured I was going to be done. And then one of my friends actually mentioned that there was an acrobatics and tumbling team at Oregon, and they're like, you should try out. So I went and tried out and was lucky enough to make the team.
You mentioned background in gymnastics. How did that get started? How did you fall in love with that sport?
Just growing up, I was involved with a bunch of different sports, and gymnastics was kind of the one that stuck. I liked the competitive side of it. I liked the focus on technique and the discipline that it provided, and then just kind of growing up through high school and getting to compete at that level with my friends was something that really kept me involved in the sport.
What were some of the other sports you attempted?
I tried soccer for a little bit. I danced for a while. There was a bunch of different I thought I might try softball for a little bit, but that kind of didn't really stick. So it was kind of just a whole mesh of different opportunities.
Now, you lived in Anchorage, Alaska.
Correct.
At one point.
Yep.
Snowstorm, cold weather. Now, we're used to that in Wisconsin, but I'm guessing like this type of weather that we're dealing with these last couple of days, that's nothing new for you?
I would say it's new in terms of the wind chill. We don't get any wind in Alaska. So as far as the snow goes, that's pretty normal. It's pretty used to that, but that wind chill will definitely get you.
So how do you end up from Alaska to Oregon to Temecula, Wisconsin?
So when I transferred from the University of Anchorage, Alaska, which is where I did my freshman year of college, I decided that I wanted to go someplace different, but not too far from home. I toured the University of Oregon's campus and absolutely fell in love, and so I ended up transferring there in my sophomore year. And then as far as getting out to Wisconsin, the old head coach, one of the old head coaches, Mackenzie Wilcox, was one of my former teammates. And at that time, she needed an assistant, so she asked for someone to come out and help her, and I jumped at that opportunity to come out. So,
did you ever envision you would get into coaching at some point?
I figured that it would be something that I'd want to kind of stay involved with for a little bit, but I never thought that it would happen as quickly as it has as far as taking over as a head coach and things like that. But it's been an awesome opportunity, and I wouldn't change it at all.
So when you became the head coach, did you turn to anybody, any former coaches, any former teammates to try to get advice to help you prepare for taking over the reins?
Yes. So obviously Mackenzie was a huge advocate for kind of helping me with that transition just because she had experience here at Concordia. But my old head coach and the lady who kind of created the sport, Felicia Mulkey, who's the head coach at Baylor now, I reach out to her often to kind of get some advice as to different aspects of the coaching philosophy. And I also have many former teammates who are now coaches at different campuses, so that's been really nice to kind of have that support system to lean on.
When you look at the sport, when you look at coaching, what are your favorite parts about the sport, about coaching?
I think my favorite part about the sport is just the different athletic elements that we're able to pull in, because it's so unique as far as the combination of different types of techniques that we're able to use and kind of all these different skills and elements that we're able to create and mesh together into something new. As far as coaching goes, I would say my favorite thing is probably just having an athlete transition into this sport, just because they all do come from different backgrounds, but then also watching them reach their potential as far as what they thought they might not be able to do, and at the end of the season being able to look back with them and say, you came in not being able to do a shoulder stand, and now you're leaving, holding people up over your head. So.
Now on CWFalcons.com on your bio, it says you're currently pursuing a master's degree in early childhood education. So what's the ultimate goal? What's the dream job, and do you see coaching still part of your future?
So I am completing my master's in early childhood education. It's something that I've kind of loved growing up and things like that. However, I'm not really sure where that plays into my future right now, as far as if I want to pursue a teaching degree or if I want to kind of stay with coaching for a while. Right now, I'm very happy with where I'm at, so I'm not kind of pushing for a huge change anytime soon, kind of just seeing what the future holds.
So February 10th, it's a Sunday. Adrian will be in town. Get the season started for acrobatics and tumbling. First of 3 home dates inside the John Book Fieldhouse. When fans come out in a couple of weeks for that event, what can they expect to see? What are you anticipating for that season opener?
I think it's going to be a fantastic season opener. I mean, Adrian has been our closest competition over the past couple of years, and each year that program has just continued to grow and kind of get closer to where we're at, so I'm really hoping that it's going to be a good competition. I think it'll be very level playing field as far as the types of elements that are getting put on the mat, and so I'm really excited to kind of see what the team does with all of that.
Well, Coach Koenig, as always, thanks a lot for your time. Best of luck this season. We'll probably talk to you somewhere down the road, but best of luck with the Season 5 of Acrobatics and Tumbling.
Great. Thank you so much.
More to come as we continue here on the Falcon Focus podcast. Welcome back to the Falcon Focus podcast. We are live on Tuesdays. Our new start time, 9:45. We last till 10:15. We're live here on Facebook Live and archived on cwfalcons.com. Of course, you can download the audio thanks to Podbean. Listen on iTunes. And again, we're back inside the cafeteria. We now switch gears to men's tennis. Steve Anschutz, our guest. He's the women's tennis head coach, has been since the spring of 2012, the men's tennis head coach since 2015. And their season gets underway coming up on Saturday from the Racine Indoor Tennis Club, 8 a.m. at Carthage and 12 p.m. against Ripon, then home on Sunday against Carroll at 11 a.m. Coach, thanks for spending some time with us. And I know back in the fall you guys had an opportunity to get one tournament in, now some practices. What have you seen from the squad so far? What are you kind of anticipating from the upcoming season?
We're really deep, so I'm anticipating a lot of really good wins from the bottom of the half of the lineup and some really good competition, some fight from the top guys, because the top guys are going to go against those other top guys, so we'll see how we can fare there.
Only 2 seniors last year, so there's a lot of experience back, is there not?
Yeah, there's a lot of experience, which is really fun to coach because we've only had 2 practices so far, but they've just run so smooth and easy going that you don't have to give much instruction because they kind of just know what to expect and what you want them to do.
You have a sophomore who's coming back after being number 1 singles, number 1 doubles a year ago. What struck you about him that earned him the number 1 spot in both of those areas? And is that a lock automatically this season, or does he, again, have to continue to compete and fight for that number 1 spot?
Yeah, so Nolan came in as a freshman. He's a very good athlete. He's built strong, and he's got a really good tennis background. Did a lot of tournaments, so he's been around the block a few times. And he came into tryouts and just did what he had to. He beat everyone else. So he started off as 1, got a really nice win against Whitewater, got a couple other nice wins throughout his freshman year. But him and I have been talking because he's no longer a freshman. People aren't going to just look over him. I mean, I think last year a lot of people thought, oh, he's a freshman, who knows how good he is. But now he's established himself. So now it's taken his game to the next level. And we want him to be a guy that people fear and people talk about. So that's the step that we're trying to make this year, is taking him to that next level.
As far as technique goes, anything that he's tweaked, anything you've seen from his game that's changed from 1 year to now here in practice?
He's got a really good foundation in tennis, so it's not so much technique, it's just expanding his game. So Nolan is kind of like a counterpuncher or a really aggressive baseliner, and so what we've been trying to do is we've been trying to improve his net game so he can be more aggressive, come in off the ball, and hit even harder from the baseline if he's willing to come in.
Who are some of the other athletes who are expecting perhaps some big things from this spring?
I'm really looking at my juniors. We have Nathan Raskin and Gabe Inversi,
okay.
2 guys who have had a ton of experience. They both have been playing consistently since their freshman year. This is a huge year for them because they're juniors. They know what I want. They're both starting to now enter the top of the lineup. And so now they're the new leaders in that way of being the top guys. And so I'm really excited to see what they can present for us, both in doubles and singles, and kind of how they run the team, not from a leadership or not from a vocal standpoint, but just from a presence standpoint at practice and at matches.
According to the roster, you've added 4 freshmen. So when you look toward adding future Falcons, what are you looking for in a tennis athlete? And how do you see these freshmen maybe fitting in here in year 1?
Yeah, so we had a really nice freshman class where we're really happy about them because they just are all around good people, athletes, and students. They're good academically, they have a strong tennis foundation, and they're just good people. And so we're really happy about that class, and that's kind of what we're looking for, is we're looking for guys that fit that aspect. They have those 3 qualities: good person, good student, good athlete.
So right now, kind of summing up what we've just been talking about, you have a pretty good grasp, at least here in this first weekend, how that lineup's going to look. Is it going to be a work in progress throughout the non-conference portion of the schedule?
Yeah, it's going to be a big work in progress, mainly because we're so deep. We have so many returners that we kind of know where we want people, but at the same time, because we're so deep, we can make adjustments per match. So as a coach, I'm thinking in my head, do I want to just keep things the same the whole time and just build that relationship up for like doubles? Or this person's really good at this and this person's really good at that. Do I want to switch them once in a while because I know what this team is like and I know what that team is like? So it's something as a coach we're going to have to decide as a coaching staff and then just go with it.
Eventually, conference play will get underway on the 30th of March at Wisconsin Lutheran. Falcons will go into NAC play as the reigning back-to-back regular season and tournament champions. What made those squads so special, so dominant?
I think it came down to how we practice, in all reality. The biggest change that I brought into the team was our practices. Our practices are very planned out, and we know exactly what we want to do, and we have ways of playing tennis. If you went to another coach, he might coach you a completely different way, but I have a specific way I want you to play tennis and a specific way to practice. And the last couple of years, those guys have embraced that. And by embracing that, we kind of have an identity, and when we go into matches, we don't have questions. We know what we want to play like, and we've just dominated by doing that.
I know this may be a tough question to answer at this point without having seen results or seen anything live, but when you look at the conference as a whole, maybe just based on tradition, who are some of the schools that you expect will be right there with the Falcons competing for a conference championship?
Yeah, so we have a new school this year, being Illinois Institute of Technology. They're very strong. They're very deep. They have some top-end talent. They're able to draw players from Europe, so they have some of that European talent. So that'll be difficult for us. And then at the same time, Edgewood has been always a competitor with us, and MSUE has always been to the top. So I'm just expecting the same, except Illinois Tech being that new team and having some top talent. They've had some really good results, so we're really preparing for them this year.
You know, you talked about your coaching staff, too, and how they factor in the team's success. And one of the guys, Russell Johnson, also once upon a time part of the hockey team, NAC's all-time wins leader. Tell us about the makeup of the coaching staff and what they bring to this program, and how nice is it having a guy like Russell Johnson that these athletes, besides as yourself, can fall back on and go to for advice, and they have that winning pedigree?
So Russell Johnson is not part of our coaching staff.
Not anymore?
No. He hasn't been for a while now.
Okay, well, CWFalcons.com needs to be updated.
So he hasn't been on a coaching staff for over 2 years now.
Okay.
But we had some really nice other coaching staff. Last year we had Dustin Holzhauer, who was a top-end player for MSUE. He was a great help because he, along with myself, really like aggressive tennis, so he was always a push for that. And then our latest addition from last year is we got a GA position, and so we hired Olaf Gilmaroins, who was a scholarship player over at Cardinal Stritch. And he's been really helpful because he has that foreign concept and has different ideas, and he's just really presentable in tennis, and he's really, really good with technique. So he's really helped the guys from a technique standpoint in everything from serving to ground strokes to volleys.
So when you look at the men's program, you talk about the current coaching staff. Again, Russell not on there, so we'll update CWFalcons.com. Your former head coach, though, your first year was part of your coaching staff, Dr. Tom Weber.
Yep.
How neat was it to have him part of your staff that first year as you made that transition to taking over the men's program? And what has he meant to you, not only as an athlete, but as a coach?
Yeah, so Tom, it was great to have him my first year because he was the guy I could just bounce questions off of, and he always had an answer, which was awesome. It was also great because Tom knew what his strengths and weaknesses were as a coach, and I'm kind of the same way. I know what my strengths and weaknesses are, and we were very opposites. I'm very good on a practice court. Tom is really good at organizing a schedule, getting guys ready for just the whole season. And so it was nice because from a practice standpoint, I knew what I was doing. And then it was Tom, what do you think about this match? How do you like this setup? And he would just give feedback. And so it was really nice having that setup because then that set me up not even for the first year, but for years down the road, just bouncing ideas off him that first year of how to schedule things.
Now, you're 2009 Concordia, Wisconsin grad. You look back and you had an impressive career as a Falcon. When you reflect back, what are you most proud of when you look at your time as an athlete?
For me, it was we were going through a lot of transitions at that time with conferences, and so it was the first opportunity that Concordia could make it to the NCAA tournament, and we did it. And so that was under Tom. It was with some great guys, and it was just so special making it for the first time to the NCAA tournament and experiencing it. It was so much fun.
So did you realize, I asked Sarah the same question, talking about acrobatics and tumbling, that once you were done playing, at least here at Concordia, that you'd go the coaching route? Was that kind of in the deck of cards, or did that just kind of come about?
I always knew I love tennis, and I always knew I wanted to give back to tennis, and so I never really thought about it from a college standpoint because I always thought of college tennis as really upper echelon, like the top coaches, things like that. And I thought maybe down the road, but really what I thought is I was going to be a teacher. I was going to coach at high school level and just give back that way. And then I started doing that. And then Dr. Barnhill gave me a call one day and said, hey, would you ever be interested in working at Concordia? And I had some really nice results at the high school level with Nicolay High School. And so I came, I interviewed with the team, we did a couple practices, and I said, yeah, I think this is the next level I want to be at.
So for you now, I mean, tennis is kind of a full year, I mean, around-the-clock type sport for you.
Yeah.
so what, I mean, outside of Concordia, what are you involved in when it comes to the sport of tennis?
Well, actually, I'm starting to try and expand my roles right now. There's some big tournaments actually in Milwaukee that have asked me to be on their committees.
Okay.
And then I'm actually on the national committee for the ITA, the Intercollegiate Tennis Association. So that takes up a lot of my time. We have calls about monthly. We had a conference down in Florida that I had to be at, and so that's been really cool because I'm working with a lot of higher end coaches. I mean, the USC coach was there. And coaches from all across the country, and we're discussing big topics like how to increase the enrollment of tennis as a sport, what formats do we want to do, how do we get players in college to then go the pro route, because that's a really common thing these days. So it's fun being part of that conversation and having a say and saying, well, here at Concordia, and people now know I'm at Concordia and that Concordia represents tennis at the national level too.
Where did your passion for the sport come from, and when did it start?
I would say, well, I grew up just hitting with my mom, just a little bit, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know if I was playing tennis or playing baseball. I was just hitting back and forth with my mom. But then in middle school, we started a program called tennis, and I was like, all right, it's a sport, I'll do it because it's a sport. And so I went out, and because I hit with my mom as a little kid, I knew how to put the ball over the net. And so I went to the first practice, and I was like the only guy that could actually make contact with the ball and put it back over. So the first year right away, I was the top player on the team in middle school, and my coach was amazing. He was just an older guy who loved tennis. He just gave you that love. And then he helped me play it in high school. And then at the high school level, I had another coach that was just a fun guy to be around. He made tennis so much fun for me. And he was the guy that, kind of convinced me that I had so much fun playing under him, I wanted to continue. So then I ended up here at Concordia, and then that's where I really became a tennis player and got really good, and now the rest is history.
I do want to wrap things up by bringing up the women's tennis team as well, and you go back to the fall, and the team ended up going 10-1, 9-1 in conference play. When you look back, how would you kind of summarize the way the fall season played out?
Exactly how I anticipated. Edgewood is really deep. They're really good right now. They have a ton of experience, kind of like we do on the men's side right now. And we're really good too. We're just lacking that experience. And so I'm expecting a really good fight this coming spring because all these freshman ladies, they were a little scared at the match, which you anticipate. You know that going into it. But now this whole March, April season, when we're playing all these other really top teams, they're going to get a lot of experience, and they're going to see teams way stronger than Edgewood. So I'm expecting them to come into the conference match really ready for that.
And then the spring season for women's, as you kind of alluded to, will start in Orlando, Florida, coming up in March. That sounds nice right about now. NAC tournament will be May 5th, at least for the Falcons. A semifinal buys the number 2 seed, and again, we'll await the highest remaining seed. That's kind of unique as the Falcons go for a 4P. Kind of unique in the sense, and I know tennis is like this, but okay, you play in the fall, and you already know, what your route to a NAC tournament championship is. So I guess, how do you approach the spring? Is it just, maybe tweaking some things or trying to adjust some things here and there to ultimately prepare for May 5th?
Exactly. So what we do is we take a bunch of notes during the fall of what we saw from our opponents and from ourselves. And then we tell our players, here are the adjustments we'd like to see you make over the winter time by yourself on your own time. And then in the springtime, we evaluate how good they've done it or how much they've improved and how many more improvements we need to make to win that NACC tournament.
Well, Coach, as always, thanks a lot for your time. Appreciate it. Best of luck this week. I'm glad you're going to be indoors.
Yes.
We'll do this again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks to Steve Anschutz along with Sarah Koenig, our guests here this week. And again, we'll do it again next Tuesday, 9:45 start for the Falcon Focus podcast.